In 2011, people from across the Arab world desired for change in governance as autocrats reigned supreme. While Arab Spring revolts were at their height and despots were toppled, Yemen was not an exception as Abdul Rabbu Mansur Hadi emerged as the new president. Perceiving this as an opportunity, Houthis, a rebel Shiite militia, took advantage of the transition, took control of the northern heartland of Sada province and neighboring areas. In the subsequent years, Houthis took the capital Sana'a, forcing the president to flee the country. Saudi Arabia and 8 other mostly Sunni Arab states began an air campaign targeting the Houthis, aiming to end Iranian influence in Yemen and restore Hadi's government. The involvement of Saudi Arabia and its allies have devastated Yemen like never before, as the Saudi-led coalition has increasingly targeted civilian infrastructure, ravaging daily lives of Yemenis and significantly contributing to the largest humanitarian crisis in the world. Why are the rival factions refusing to lay aside their differences, considering the state of the general population? Is this war being prolonged due to the interests of foreign powers? Who benefits from this war the most? Foreign powers or Yemenis themselves? Why are their neighbors scavenging on them despite sharing the same religion and race?
Uncertainty prevailed as protests and demonstrations rocked the Arab world in the early 2010s, as the vast majority of the Arab public called for a transition to democratic government across Arab nations. Following the Arab Spring revolts, an uprising forced longtime President Abdullah Saleh to hand over power to his deputy, Abdul Rabbu Mansur Hadi, in 2011. Mansur Hadi's incompetency and failure to stabilize the country was an ideal opportunity for the Houthi rebels as they took control of significant provinces and the capital Sana'a by the end of 2014. Many enthusiastic Yemenis, including Sunnis, supported Houthis against the government forces, which proved vital while taking over Sana'a. After taking over Sana'a, the Houthi leaders announced the dissolution of the parliament and the formation of a revolutionary committee to govern the country on 6 February 2015. Abdul Rabbu Mansur Hadi fled to Aden and announced Houthi rule as illegitimate, indicating he remained as the president of the country.
After the takeover of Sana'a by the Houthis, regional powerhouses Saudi Arabia and UAE formed a coalition, starting an air campaign aimed at eliminating the Houthis, who they believed to be backed by Iran, to restore Hadi's government. They received logistical, military and intelligence support from the US, UK and France, as foreign countries started backing various militant groups. While continuing their airstrikes, destruction reached unprecedented levels. Despite years of a military campaign against Houthis, the coalition has not been able to oust them from Sana'a and northwestern Yemen. After the Saudi-led coalition entered the war in 2015, they have targeted civilian infrastructure like hospitals, agricultural infrastructure, roads, bridges, and water systems.
Yemen is also strategically important because it sits on the Bab al-Mandab Strait, linking the Red Sea with the Gulf of Aden, through which much of the world's oil shipments pass while controlling access to the Suez Canal. Disruptions of these seaborne supply routes to Asia and Europe will result in increased volatility in the oil prices. Besides, a major escalation of the conflict would pose a direct threat to its neighbors, Saudi Arabia and Oman, due to the instability and militant groups present in Yemen. 6 years into an armed conflict that has killed over 18,400 civilians, Yemen remains the largest humanitarian crisis. Yemen is experiencing the world's worst food security crisis as 20.1 million people, nearly two-thirds of the population, require food assistance at the beginning of 2020. The prolonged conflict has had a devastating impact on civilians across the country, as an estimated 80% of the population, 24 million people, require some form of humanitarian assistance. The economy of the country has been ravaged by years of conflict. Millions of people in Yemen have lost their income due to business closures, and some working in the public sector have not received their salaries regularly, leading to increased poverty. 17.8 million people lack access to safe water and sanitation. 19.7 million people lack access to adequate healthcare. 3.3 million people remain displaced. 3.2 million people require treatment for acute malnutrition. 14.3 million who are in acute need of humanitarian assistance. Only 51% of health facilities are fully functioning. More than a quarter of all children are out of school.
As Iran and Saudi lock horns through their proxies in the region to gain control of a country with strategic importance, the consequences have been utterly dire for the residents of Yemen. Many of the EU countries backed the Saudi-led coalition and provided them with arms, despite the circumstances of the Yemenis pushing them into further desperation. Despite popular discontent among people, the UN, which has long promoted and championed democracy, why does it continue to back and recognize Saudi-backed Abdurrabbu Mansur Hadi as the legitimate ruler of Yemen, while imposing him on a nation against their will? Nations around the globe, including their allies and neighbors, neglected Yemen and the plea of its residents. What has Yemen achieved after sacrificing more than 2.5 million lives? Will the future of the upcoming generations of Yemenis will be decided by foreign powers that are intoxicated by their desire for dominance?